Have you ever stood at the foot of a mountain, a peak so high its summit was lost in the clouds, and felt the crushing weight of the climb before you even took the first step? That mountain, for so many of us, isn't made of rock and ice. It's built of textbooks, deadlines, and the quiet, persistent fear that we are simply not enough. This was the mountain that a young man named Leo faced every single day, and his story is a reminder that the greatest climbs are conquered not with a single heroic leap, but with a series of small, intentional steps. Our story begins not in a grand hall of learning, but in the quiet clutter of Leo's bedroom. It was a space that perfectly mirrored the state of his mind, chaotic and overwhelmed. Books were piled precariously on his desk, their spines unbroken, their pages unread. Notebooks lay open, filled more with frustrated doodles than with coherent notes. A history textbook, his current nemesis, sat like a tombstone in the center of it all. Leo would sit there for hours, staring at the dense paragraphs, the words blurring into an indecipherable soup. His mind was a tempest of distraction. A stray thought about a video game would morph into a worry about what his friends were doing, which would then spiral into the heavy, familiar dread of failure. He wasn't just struggling to learn. He was losing a battle against himself. The constant internal narrative was a brutal one. You're not smart enough. Everyone else gets this. Why can't you? This feeling of inadequacy had become his shadow, following him into every classroom, whispering doubt during every test. Self-confidence wasn't just low, it was a currency he felt he had never possessed. The turning point didn't arrive with a lightning bolt of inspiration, but in the quiet, unassuming form of his philosophy teacher, Mr. Alistair Finch. Mr. Finch was a man who seemed to exist in a state of perpetual calm. He was older, with lines of kindness etched around his eyes, and a way of speaking that was both deliberate and gentle. He didn't teach with loud pronouncements, but with thoughtful questions, and he seemed to see not just the students in his class, but the individuals behind the eyes. One afternoon, after another class, where Leo had felt completely adrift, he lingered behind. He didn't even know what he was going to say, but the desperation had to go somewhere. Seeing the profound weariness on the young man's face, Mr. Finch simply gestured to a chair opposite his desk and waited. Leo, in a torrent of pent-up frustration, explained his struggle. He spoke of his inability to focus, his terrible memory, and the suffocating anxiety that made his mind feel like a prison. Finch listened patiently, his gaze never wavering. When Leo finally fell silent, exhausted from his own confession, the teacher didn't offer platitudes or complex academic strategies. Instead, he smiled a soft, knowing smile. "Leo," he began, his voice a balm on the young man's frayed nerves. "Learning is not about forcing the mind to work. It is about creating the right conditions for the mind to flourish. It is an art, and like any art, it can be learned. It requires not brute force, but gentle guidance. I can teach you 5 simple lessons. They are not magic, but they are powerful. All they ask of you is a little patience and a little practice." And so, in the quiet, sun-dappled classroom, Leo's true education began. The first lesson, Mr. Finch explained, was the foundation upon which all others were built. Your mind, he said, is like a glass of water filled with dirt and sand. When it is shaken by anxiety, distraction, and self-doubt, the water is murky. You cannot see through it. Trying to force information into a mind in that state is like trying to see the bottom of a muddy pond. It's impossible. The first step is not to study, but to let the water settle. He guided Leo through the simple act of breathing. He instructed him to close his eyes, to sit comfortably, and to focus on nothing but the sensation of the air entering his lungs and then slowly leaving. He told him not to fight the distracting thoughts that would inevitably arise, but to acknowledge them gently, like clouds passing in the sky, and then return his focus to his breath. "Just for 2 minutes before you open a book," Mr. Finch advised. "Calm the water." That evening, back in his chaotic room, Leo felt a familiar wave of panic as he looked at his history book. He almost dismissed the idea as silly, but the memory of his teacher's calm demeanor urged him to try. He closed his eyes. His mind immediately raced. The test tomorrow, a conversation he'd had at lunch, the lyrics of a song. It felt pointless, but he persisted, gently guiding his attention back, again and again, to the simple rhythm of his breath. In, out, in, out. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes. The mountain of work was still there. The anxiety hadn't vanished, but the frantic, buzzing energy in his chest had subsided. The water was not yet clear, but the silt was beginning to settle. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sliver of peace. The second lesson followed a few days later. Leo reported his small success, and Mr. Finch nodded, pleased. Now that the water is calmer, he said, we must learn to gaze into it. We must learn the art of single-pointed focus. Our minds are conditioned to leap from one thought to the next, like a monkey swinging from branch to branch. We must teach it to rest. He then shared a simple visualization. Imagine a single, steady candle flame in a dark, quiet room. Your task is to simply watch that flame. Notice its color, its shape, the way it dances. Your thoughts will come. They are like moths, drawn to the light. They will try to distract you, to pull your attention away. Do not be angry with them. Simply notice them, and then gently, lovingly, guide your focus back to the flame. Each time you bring your attention back, you are strengthening a muscle, the muscle of focus. Leo began to practice this, not just before studying, but during. When he was reading a paragraph about the Roman Empire and his mind drifted to what he would have for dinner, he pictured the candle flame. He acknowledged the thought, dinner, and gently guided his focus back to the words on the page. It was incredibly difficult at first. He felt like he was herding a flock of scattered sheep. But with each gentle return, the muscle grew stronger. He started to read a full paragraph without his mind wandering. Then two, then a whole page. He was learning to be present, to inhabit the moment fully, rather than letting his mind be a runaway train. Even with these new tools, the sheer volume of work could still feel like an insurmountable wall. This led to the fourth lesson. Seeing Leo looking overwhelmed by a thick science textbook, Mr. Finch offered another simple analogy. No one can split a giant log with a single blow of an axe, he said. It's too large, too dense. The attempt would only exhaust you and break your spirit. But a skilled woodcutter doesn't see a log. He sees the first split. He breaks the log into two smaller pieces. Then he takes one of those pieces and splits it again. He continues until he has a pile of manageable firewood. You must learn to be a woodcutter with your studies. He took Leo's textbook and showed him how to apply this. Don't try to conquer the whole chapter, he advised. Look at the first section. Now, break that section down into its paragraphs. Your only goal for the next 15 minutes is to understand this one paragraph. Read it, ask why, absorb it like a sponge. Then, take a short break. Then tackle the next paragraph. You are not reading a book. You are simply splitting one small piece of wood at a time. Soon, you will have a whole pile of firewood, and the daunting log will be gone. This strategy was transformative. It turned his mountains into molehills. A massive research paper was no longer a single terrifying entity, but a series of small, achievable tasks. Find 5 sources, write the introduction, outline the first point. Each small victory, each piece of firewood he created, fueled his confidence and gave him the momentum to continue. The paralysis of being overwhelmed was replaced by the steady rhythm of productive action. Weeks turned into months. Leo was a different person. His mind was calmer, his focus sharper. He was understanding his subjects, not just memorizing them, and he was tackling his work with a structured, confident approach. But Mr. Finch had one final lesson, perhaps the most important of all. He pointed to a small, thriving plant on his windowsill. This little plant, he said, is the embodiment of our final lesson: consistency. If I were to forget about it for a month and then, in a panic, dump a whole bucket of water on it, what do you think would happen? It would probably die, Leo replied. Exactly, said Mr. Finch. It doesn't need a flood. It needs a little water every single day. Your learning, your focus, your confidence, they are all just like this plant. Cramming for 8 hours the night before an exam is the flood. It's stressful and ineffective. But studying for 30 minutes every day, practicing your breathing, gently returning your focus, that is the daily watering. It is the small, consistent effort that leads to deep roots and strong, vibrant growth. True mastery is never the result of one grand, heroic effort. It is the quiet accumulation of thousands of small, faithful ones. Leo took this final lesson to heart. He created a simple, sustainable routine, a little work each day. He no longer saw studying as a punishment to be endured, but as a practice, a form of mental nourishment. The change in Leo was profound. It wasn't just his grades, which climbed from the bottom of the class to the top. It was the light in his eyes. The slumped shoulders were gone, replaced by a posture of quiet confidence. He began to participate in class discussions, not to show off, but out of genuine curiosity. He found joy in the process of discovery, a pleasure in the feeling of a complex idea finally clicking into place. The chaotic bedroom became an organized sanctuary for thought. The shadow of self-doubt had not vanished entirely, but he now knew how to step into the light. He understood that his mind wasn't broken. It had simply been untrained. He had not been given a new brain, but a user's manual for the one he had always possessed. Leo's story is not a myth or a fairy tale. It is a testament to a simple, powerful truth. Extraordinary transformation is born from ordinary, consistent practice. The mountain that once seemed impossible to climb was conquered one small, mindful step at a time. So I ask you to look at your own mountains, whatever they may be. Do not be discouraged by their size. Do not be paralyzed by the journey ahead. Instead, begin with a single conscious breath. Let the muddy water of your mind settle. Find your candle flame and learn to hold your gaze. Choose to be the sponge, not the stone. Break the great logs of your challenges into small, manageable pieces, and then water your garden every single day with patience and with faith. You hold within you the power to calm your own storms, to focus your own energy, and to absorb the wisdom the world has to offer. Believe in the power of the small step. Practice these simple lessons and watch as you begin to climb joyfully and confidently towards your very own summit.